The locksmith's van was still in the driveway when Rebecca pulled up, her wedding dress bag draped over her arm like nothing had happened. She froze on the front porch of the Charlotte, North Carolina bungalow they'd bought together 11 months ago, staring at the brass deadbolt that no longer recognized her key. "Daniel, open this door right now," she said, jiggling the handle like it was a misunderstanding. Inside, through the window, she could see her belongings stacked neatly by the door in labeled boxes. She hadn't even taken off her makeup from the reception yet. 6 months earlier, Daniel Ross had been a contractor with a steady client list and a simple rule he'd learned from his father. Respect isn't negotiable, no matter how good the chemistry feels. He met Rebecca at a mutual friend's barbecue in Ballantyne, and she was magnetic, the kind of woman who lit up a room and expected the room to stay lit for her. Their courtship moved fast. Too fast. His sister Emily warned him over coffee at the Common Market diner. "She flirts with everyone, Daniel. Even at your birthday dinner." He brushed it off. Confidence wasn't a crime, he told himself. He wanted to believe in her. The engagement came with warning signs Daniel chose to ignore. At a friend's rehearsal dinner, Rebecca danced too long with an old college boyfriend named Jason while Daniel stood by the bar, jaw tight, saying nothing. When he brought it up later, she laughed it off. "You're not the jealous type, are you? That's so unattractive." He told himself boundaries could wait until after the wedding, that people settle down once there's a ring, a mortgage, a future on paper. That was his first mistake, and somewhere deep down, he already knew it. 3 weeks before the wedding, Daniel finally drew a line. Over dinner at their kitchen table, he said it plainly. "If you ever disrespect me in public, especially in front of our families, I will not pretend it didn't happen. I need you to hear that." Rebecca rolled her eyes and called him dramatic, insisting he was manufacturing problems that didn't exist. She agreed to the terms anyway, mostly to end the conversation, not because she believed them. Daniel wrote nothing down, said nothing more, but he remembered every word of that promise. He always remembered. The wedding itself was beautiful, a converted barn venue outside Charlotte, string lights, 200 guests, Rebecca's mother crying happy tears during the vows. Daniel felt, for a few hours, that maybe he'd worried over nothing. Then came the reception, the open bar, and Jason, uninvited, but somehow present as another guest's plus one. Daniel watched from across the dance floor as Rebecca laughed too close to Jason's face near the gift table, her hand resting on his arm the way it used to rest on Daniel's. He didn't move yet. He just watched, and counted the seconds. Something in him went very still. It happened during the last slow song, right as Daniel turned from the bar with 2 drinks in hand. Rebecca kissed Jason, not a peck, unmistakable, 10 feet from her own parents. Gasps rippled through nearby tables faster than Daniel could process it. He set the drinks down without a word, walked outside into the parking lot, and sat in his truck for 11 minutes, doing nothing but breathing. He didn't confront her that night. He didn't yell. He simply drove home alone and made one phone call before sunrise, to a locksmith he'd used on job sites for years. By the time Rebecca stumbled home near 1 a.m., furious that Daniel had abandoned her at her own reception, she found the porch light on and nothing else. She banged on the door, calling him selfish, calling him a coward for leaving. She had no idea yet that the locks were changed, or that her name had already been removed from the joint checking account that morning by Daniel's brother-in-law, a bank manager who owed him a favor. She assumed this was a fight she could win with enough noise. She had never seen Daniel actually enforce a boundary before. She was about to. What Rebecca didn't know was that Daniel had spent the past 3 weeks quietly preparing, not out of vengeance, but out of self-respect. He'd photographed the prenup clause about infidelity that her own lawyer had insisted on including, back when Rebecca thought it was Daniel who needed protecting. He'd kept a folder, physical, in a fireproof box in his truck, with a marriage certificate, the signed prenup, and a printed text where Rebecca once promised, "I would never embarrass you like that, I swear." Small things. Boring, procedural things. But things that don't lie the way people do. Emily, Daniel's sister, had been standing close to him that whole night, close enough to catch his phone when his hands went unsteady. She'd watched her brother's face when the kiss happened, and she recognized it. Not rage, but the exact expression their father wore the day he finally left a business partner who'd been stealing from him for years. "You don't have to explain anything to her," Emily told Daniel in the parking lot, handing him his keys. "You already told her the rule. She's the one who broke it." Daniel nodded, said nothing, and drove home to make the call that mattered. Now, on the porch, Rebecca's pounding turned to pleading, then to threats about calling a divorce lawyer before the marriage was even a day old. Daniel finally opened the door, but only the width of the chain lock. "You have 30 minutes to take what's in the boxes," he said, voice flat and even. "Everything else stays." Rebecca's mascara had run down her face. "You're really doing this over one kiss? You're ruining everything, Daniel. This is humiliating." He almost laughed at that. Humiliating, as if he were the one who'd caused it. He slid the folder through the gap in the door, the prenup, the printed text, a copy of the venue security footage request he'd already filed that morning. "I'm not ruining the night," he said. "You did that yourself, in front of 200 people, 3 hours after you married me." Rebecca's mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time since he'd known her, she had nothing clever to say, nothing to spin. She just stood there on the porch in her wedding dress, holding papers that proved exactly who she was. "I loved you enough to believe you'd keep one promise," Daniel said quietly through the gap in the door, "but I respected myself too much to stay after you broke it." That line landed on the porch and just hung there in the cold October air. Rebecca didn't respond. There was nothing left to negotiate, no charm left to deploy. The boxes sat between them like a verdict already read. Daniel closed the door gently, not slammed, and the deadbolt clicked home, a sound that would replay in Rebecca's mind for months afterward. 6 weeks later, the annulment was finalized at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse, faster than either family expected, thanks to the prenup's infidelity clause and the venue's timestamp footage. Rebecca moved back in with her parents in Matthews, and word around her old real estate office traveled quicker than she wanted. Clients don't love hiring an agent whose own wedding made the local Facebook groups. Jason, predictably, stopped returning her calls within a month, disappearing the way men like that always do once the excitement fades and consequences show up instead. Daniel kept the house, replaced the porch light Rebecca once complained was too harsh, and slowly, quietly rebuilt something that felt like peace. He started dating again the following spring, telling every woman up front, calmly, without apology, exactly what respect meant to him, not as a threat, but as information. Emily joked he'd become the most boring man in Charlotte, and Daniel just smiled, because boring, to him, now sounded like safety. He'd learned that saying a boundary out loud only matters if you're willing to keep it. On the 1-year anniversary of that reception, Daniel sat on his front porch with a coffee from the same diner where Emily had first warned him, watching the sun go down over a street that finally felt like his. He didn't think about Rebecca often anymore, but when he did, it wasn't with anger, just clarity. Some people mistake a calm response for weakness, right up until the door closes and doesn't open again. Daniel had learned the difference between revenge and consequence, and he never had to raise his voice to prove it.